Hi, it's Nicole Rose and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show. I'm your host, and for nearly 2 decades now, I've been an executive coach and leadership development consultant. And on this show, I share evidence-based insights from my coaching, leadership and psychological expertise, and inspiring interviews that help women like you to combine your work, life and motherhood in a more successful and sustainable way. Join me and my special guests as we delve into leadership and lifestyle topics for women, empowering you to thrive one conversation at a time. I'm so happy that you're here, and let's get on with today's episode. Welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Nicole Rose, and in this episode, we're going to be exploring the concept of nervous system regulation. And if you listen to my podcast episode where I shared my 2023 end of year reflections, it was episode 125, so just go back and listen to that if you haven't. You'll know that my measure of success for this year and beyond is a calm nervous system. Because when you have a calm nervous system, you have the freedom and choice to choose your response. You become response-able, so responsible. And that's really a big kind of focus and intention for me in 2024. And the state of our nervous systems really determines how we think, feel and behave, problem solve, react, adapt, create and make decisions. So it has a huge bearing on the quality of our life. So when I connected with today's guest online, I was intrigued about her work. My guest today is Nicole Rose. Nicole is a nervous system, trauma and mindset expert and a coach for entrepreneurs. Her mission is to help entrepreneurs rewire their nervous system and mindset so they grow a wildly profitable and sustainable business with abundance and ease. But even if you're not an entrepreneur, you're going to be interested in what Nicole has got to share. Her work is compassion-led, science-based and creates results. So come and join me as we dive into things all nervous system related with Nicole and understand how we can regulate our nervous systems for success in life and work. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you for joining me on the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show. I've been following your work for a little while now, and it's on a subject that really, really resonates with me. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation with you. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So for people that don't know about you, can you share a bit about your journey and how you've come to specialise as a nervous system coach?
Yes, of course. It's a very personal journey, really. My journey to being a nervous system and trauma and mindset expert. It started really in childhood. So I experienced a lot of emotional abuse growing up from a narcissistic parent. And so I grew into adulthood with a lot of, I guess, what you would call symptoms of trauma, but a lot of unacknowledged trauma. And so I was a perfectionist. So I was striving to please others, to change myself to in order to receive the approval of others. A lot of the people pleasing, the fawning response, you name it. I experienced a lot of high functioning anxiety. I also had a lot of body image issues and an eating disorder as well. It's something that's actually more common than we think with a lot of women as well. There's this striving for perfection, for the perfect job, the perfect life, the perfect body. And I was basically living dissociated from my body, which just means disconnected from my body. And numb, really. And that's as a result of the freeze state response. We hear a lot about the fight or flight. A few people are familiar with the fight or flight. But then when the pain, it stresses the nervous system beyond the trauma, it stresses the nervous system beyond its ability to cope, we go into freeze. And that's where we leave our body and we become numb. And I see that a lot with most of the population out there, is that we're moving, we're keeping ourselves numb through, whether it's food, whether it's trying to be perfect, trying to please others. We're disconnected from ourselves. And so that's really where it started. And then at one point I was leading a path. So I have a science background. I also have a banking background in my past life. And I was really leading a path that now looking back really wasn't mine, but I was on autopilot. not really conscious of my life, and I call it usually asleep. I was very much asleep to my life, and then over the course of a few months, I started to wake up, and that's where I made the conscious decision to take back ownership of my life. This isn't what I wanted for myself, for the future. I wanted a family. I wanted to find my purpose, and I hear that a lot. People are looking for their purpose, and this is where I started to wake up, and I began on this healing journey, where and what I found along the way, and this is why I'm doing the work that I do, is I just found a lot of the support out there just didn't cut it. And I tried a bunch of different things. I worked with a bunch of different teachers, and not just studying. I studied a lot, but it really is about embodying and really integrating this work. And so I kind of pieced together and took what I guess, quote unquote, worked or was effective, rather than work what was effective, and kind of left behind what didn't. And so that over the course of 10 to 15 years, I went deep into working with the brain, the body, trauma, the nervous system, our subconscious mind, to really heal myself. And then from there came that purpose, and fulfilling that purpose of wanting to then share that with others. Because now when I see with my clients, what took me years, now in a matter of months, my clients are achieving in a matter of months. So really that was the background. And then working with, specifically, because I work more specifically with entrepreneurs, I'm more drawn to working with business owners and entrepreneurs. And having said that, I also have a lot of clients who are in employment. For me, I'm drawn to working with someone that's open and committed to doing this work. But what drew me to working with entrepreneurs was my own experience of entrepreneurship. And coming into this, I'd done quite a bit of quote unquote healing up until this point. And then I'm starting to get out there and market myself, and starting to coach and get my work out there. And then it was like, whew, all of that stuff, like the boogeyman from under my bed came out, and it was popping up in the most sneakiest of ways. And I was like, oh, I thought I addressed this. But it's like entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people, and I think you would probably agree, it kind of shines a spotlight. And that's what I love about it. It's just so beautiful. It's, it can help you create. If you really do this deep inner work, it can really help you expand into another level of freedom that's available to you. It's like another level of healing and being so deeply connected with yourself. So all of these wounds and these fears and these doubts, they began to come up. And so addressing these more deeply was, and what I'd realized is I had addressed the outer layers, but then what I needed to do was then address the inner layers. And that's what's helped me bring in that ease and that abundance. And that's what drew me to doing this work. So long story short, thank
you for sharing that story and being so honest about kind of your childhood experiences, because clearly those shape us so fundamentally. And you mentioned there about that experience of waking up. Mm. And I wonder, was there a particular catalyst to that awakening, or was it a gradual process?
It was a couple things. First of all, I wanted a family. Now I was in a front office investment banking job where you literally have no life. Your health is compromised. Your ability to be a human is compromised, really. I mean, because there isn't any time to actually have a human experience. And I wanted a family, and I knew it wasn't right away. This was when I was in my late 20s, where I realized I wanted a family, and I knew this wasn't going to be possible. In this place where I was at. There was that. There was a couple more things. My eating disorder had become more amplified. And I say this a lot, is that a lot of people will come to me and they'll tell me, my life really hasn't changed much, but suddenly I'm experiencing all of these symptoms, whether it's anxiety or, whatever it is that they're experiencing. And, I always say this, is that you've been living with that, your body, maybe just taking it back for a moment, in childhood, from the ages of 0 to 7 years old, our subconscious mind, our subconscious programming, and our nervous system has been imprinted in that time from the ages of 0 to 7, and then we carry that nervous system, we carry that subconscious programming. For anyone who isn't aware, the subconscious programming is simply the way you view yourself, all those beliefs around how you view yourself, how you view the world. All of those "I'm not enough" stories, they live there. The fear of being rejected, all of those kind of beliefs and those stories live in our subconscious. They're in the background. So we carry that subconscious programming, we carry that nervous system into adulthood, and it's from that place that we are. And I say this, it's like your child you is running your business, and that kind of that hits hard with a lot of people, like that, because that is actually what is happening. What did it see? Going back to what was I saying earlier? Because I often go at these tangents, and then I'm like, where did I stop?
No, we were talking about what the catalyst was, and you said one of the things was wanting to start a family. You said the second thing was your eating disorder.
Yes. And so when our nervous system, our subconscious programming, we carry them into adulthood, and then they weigh heavier and heavier, and you may not you may not experience them as strongly, and then our body speaks louder, and it speaks louder because it's there to help you survive, right? It's there to help you survive, and so it's going to speak louder, and the symptoms are going to get louder and louder and louder. So it's not because, a lot of people come to me like, I actually had a pretty good life, I didn't experience. Why is it coming up all of a sudden? It's just because your body needs to speak louder. There's something wrong here. To survive, I need to speak louder. So and so my eating disorder I had a binge eating disorder, and I remember this very precisely. I was actually on a training. This is when I began studying and all the inquiry and the embodiment work. And I was at this training, and we were at the buffet, and it was these. I remember it really, really precisely. It was these caramelized pecans, and I just couldn't stop eating them. And there was a lot. There's a lot of reasons, but the trauma is behind all of that, and needing to avoid discomfort. We can go into that later, but our relationship with discomfort plays a huge role in healing and in our nervous system healing. So those symptoms just got louder and louder and louder. And I also realized that although I was good at my job, I'm someone who is very analytical. I'm someone who works hard and is ambitious. It just wasn't me. And it began, and it was one day, actually, I remember I left, and I left with one of my friends who was also a colleague at the time, and I kind of broke down in the middle of like Midtown Manhattan in a coffee shop. I broke down. So it was an amalgamation of a few things that helped me really wake up to what is it that I want the rest of my life to look like.
It certainly sounds like that awakening came from the body rather than the mind. It was the body speaking, at some point I want a family, and the eating disorder speaking to you, and then that kind of getting upset, and it kind of came up from the body.
Yes.
We're obviously talking about the nervous system here, and it's a term that we often hear, and it seems like it's becoming more and more part of our everyday language, whereas perhaps 10, 20 years ago, it might have been talked about in a scientific sense or a biology. But in terms of what we're talking about today, can you just define actually what do we mean by nervous system and nervous system regulation?
So the nervous system comprises of the brain, the spinal cord, and all of the nerves which branch out and speak to all other bodily systems and organs, right? And it facilitates that two-way message between the brain and between the body. So for the body to speak to the brain to speak to the body, and the body to speak to the brain. So when we talk about this mind-body connection, it's almost like people believe that it's this kind of what's the right word? But this concept that's not really real, and not based into something in foundational, foundational science. But the nervous system is the key, because there is a communication between the brain, between the body, and that's the job of the nervous system. Now, when you are experiencing something, let's say you're getting some feedback at work, and it's initially the feedback, the input is received by the amygdala, right, of the brain, and it's the amygdala that will assess whether, and this is all very simplified, but that will assess whether this situation is safe or whether the situation is life-threatening. Right. So again, your body is built for survival. So your brain is built for survival, and it will assess whether this situation is safe or life-threatening. Now, when you've experienced trauma, which everyone, I wanted to say, it's really important. I talked about my own journey. I'm going to go off at another tangent here. But I talked about my own journey of trauma. Again, unacknowledged trauma. This wasn't physical abuse. This was emotional abuse. And the very challenging thing with emotional abuse, it's very hard to pinpoint, especially that early on. And so
being a child, because that is your normal, isn't it? It's like, right, you don't know that that anything is different, or that's not how it's meant to be.
That's right. But now it can be a little bit something more obvious. But what I come across is when people come to me, and I'm going to release one of the case studies from one of my clients. She came to me, she said, Nicole, nothing bad has happened in my life. I experienced a happy childhood. And that's the case for a lot of people. And we're not taking away from that happiness, but within that happy childhood, you've experienced some form of trauma. We've all experienced some form of trauma. It's simply how your brain and your body processes and internalizes certain experiences in childhood, because simply a child's brain isn't fully developed, right? The rational part of the brain isn't fully developed until 7 or 8 years old. So it's simply the way that you processed certain experiences. And that got stored in your subconscious programming with a bunch of beliefs. Maybe I'm not enough. And it got stored in your nervous system. So it's really important that I pinpoint that. So going back to the part of the brain, the part of the emotional brain that will assess whether something is safe or life-threatening. If it perceives it as life-threatening, and that is trauma, that is something that's been with you since childhood, even if quote unquote it doesn't really make sense to us, right? If it's nothing that necessarily bad that's happened to us, or it very vaguely resembles the situation that you experienced in childhood, it will still perceive it as a threat. And when it perceives it as a threat, you find that communication with the nervous system, and the nervous system will go into a fight, flight, or freeze or fawn response. And that's where you get activated. You experience anxiety, you experience overwhelm. You're going to start people pleasing. You're going to start trying to be perfect. All of these kind of symptoms. So that's a little breakdown of what the nervous system is. Now, nervous system healing, and this is where there's a lot of misconception as to what it is. Now, because a lot of the information out there will tell you are going to regulate your nervous system by practicing some yoga or by doing some breath work. Now, what that does, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system so that you move into a rest and restore space. You're not in that active fight or flight or freeze or fawn response, but that is temporary. And that is not deep nervous system regulation. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys in the audience.
It's tricky part. I'm imagining you're treating the symptom. You're not getting to the underlying cause.
That's right.
I think what I was hearing you say there is almost a lot of us might think of trauma with a capital T, a big life event that we might think of in, I suppose, those big trauma situations. But trauma can be with a small t, that there might be, as you say, our brains don't know the difference, particularly as a child. It's not the event that's necessarily traumatic, it's our interpretation of it. So somebody might come to you going, well, actually, I've not had anything traumatic happen in my life. It was their maybe childhood interpretation of it that would have been encoded as trauma.
That's right. And trauma, ultimately, whether it's a big T or small t, it's not what happened to you. It is, as some people may have heard of this, Gabor Mate said it, it's what happened inside of you as a result of what happened to you. So it's not the war that you went out and it's not cancer that you experienced, or it's not the sexual abuse. It's what happened inside of you, in your nervous system, in your subconscious programming, as a result of what happened to you. But also, it's really important that I say this, going back to what we're saying about, the not so obvious traumas, is that it's not necessarily what happened to you or the event that then caused or that then led to the trauma. It's often what didn't happen to you. It's the nurture that you didn't get, or you didn't, or your brain and your body didn't didn't feel, right? It's the love or the nurture or the care or the affection that you did not feel and you did not experience. No matter the intention of the caregiver, of the parent, it's how you, like you said, it's how you interpreted it. It's how your brain and how your nervous system interpreted it. So it's, and a lot of the small T traumas, it's ultimately it's because our emotional needs went unmet. And in a society where I like to think that, a lot of us now, parents we're breaking the cycle, but a lot of parenting in past generations was to shut down emotions because they weren't able to regulate their own emotions. They weren't aware of what creating space for emotions meant, and there's a lot of meanings, or you're a bad person if you feel angry, if you're angry, if you're you shouldn't be sad, stop crying. We even hear that every single day. I see this in movies all the time, like, oh, please stop crying, a mom's or a friend, please stop crying. It's just so ingrained in our society. And when a child's emotional needs are not met, that is emotional neglect, and that is traumatic. So yeah.
No, I think that's really, really useful to define that.
Mm.
And what I've heard from you is a number of your clients come to you kind of going, well, I've not experienced trauma. So for somebody listening, how would they know that they needed to do nervous system work? Because it sounds like it's not always that obvious. So what might be some of the symptoms or experiences somebody listening might be able to go, okay, that's nervous system stuff. Okay.
Yeah. I'll answer that really shortly, but before, because we were talking about nervous system regulation and the misconception of what it is, and we were saying how it was simply managing symptoms. We were talking about do a bit of this and this. I wanted to just talk briefly about that real nervous system regulation is guiding the nervous system, guiding the brain and the nervous system to feel safe again. So that when you're encountered in a situation where your emotional brain will say, "Ooh, alarm bells! There's something wrong here," and obviously send that message down into your nervous system. We want to essentially guide it to safety, to reprogram your brain to accurately detect threat or danger. And that's something that's really important. And so that deep nervous system regulation involves with trauma. Yeah.
So that really struck me as about that accurately being able to detect, because as you said, our amygdala, I mean, it's such a core part of us, isn't it? I always say to people that as a species, the only reason we've survived is because of that amygdala. We haven't got super sharp teeth or claws or a shell to protect us. Mm-hmm. We've developed this super sensitive brain, haven't we? That's constantly scanning, that's hyper vigilant, and it's there for our survival. But as you said, it can get out of whack that it's so hypervigilant, it sees everything as a threat. And then we've got that kind of activated nervous system.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And then, to answer your question about, what could be some signs? There's so many signs. There's overthinking. Overthinking is a big one, right? Being very indecisiveness or second guessing yourself. The people pleasing, needing to please others, right? The saying no when you really, saying yes rather when you really mean no, when you feel like you don't want to be doing something. In business or in marketing, really playing small in the sense of keeping your voice small because you're afraid of what others think. And I see this a lot, afraid of what your family will think if they're following you on social media, or afraid of what your colleagues will think, or your peers, in the industry. Keeping yourself small because that feels safe, because inherently you don't feel safe within your body. Other things are perfectionism. Perfectionism is a big one. The fear of failure, fear of making mistakes. Another one that a lot of people don't talk about, fear of success, right? Mm-hmm. Fear, and that's one of the big blocks for people is that what is actually, and people are like, no, I want success. That's why, I don't want to fail. I want success. But I say, actually, you don't, because what does it mean? It means setting yourself up for being rejected again and again, setting yourself up to really be seen, right? To really be seen in all of your imperfections. And that sends big alarm bells, right? Especially if you didn't feel safe to be you if big parts of you were shut down when you were younger, you were too much of something, too little of something, or whatever it is. So yeah, just a bunch of, and not really knowing. One big one also is not really knowing what it is that you truly want. Not knowing what it is you truly want, because when we spend a lifetime trying to please others, or a lifetime disconnected really from ourselves, trying to survive, trying to do all the things so that we receive love or receive the approval or feel like we're good enough, we are not really pursuing or not really feeling into what it is that we want and what it is that we desire. And then the one last one I wanted to talk about was our relationship with money, because that is a big one. Experiencing anxiety or worry around money, or I see a lot of high achievers, kind of doing more and more and more, and it's that next sale, or it's that next big launch that's going to make me feel successful, and then and then it's our relationship with money plays a huge. I was actually doing a post for this which I'll post up in a couple of days. It's actually, our relationship with money actually has nothing to do with money at all. It really is to do with our need for control, our need for that safety, that security, because it really fulfills this false sense of safety that we don't actually feel within our body. If I make this amount of money, then I'll feel happy, or then I'll feel more secure, or I'll feel safe. And then people get to that level and they're like, no, and it's in the next thing, and it's the next thing, because it's what's happening is it's internally. So it's that need for control, and that lack of self-trust as well, that lack of self-trust. So yeah, those are just some of the symptoms.
Yeah, and thank you for describing those symptoms, because I am sure there's somebody listening to this, and I know my audience quite well, and a number of them reach out to me, which is always a joy, and kind of share. And so many of them will resonate with that perfectionism, high achieving, people pleasing. And interestingly, our culture almost celebrates that high achievement, because, that's great. It means you're achieving lots, you're progressing in your career, you're accumulating the material things that people would say are being successful. And I'm wondering, they may probably never have thought that it was related to safety, but can probably relate to, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the bigger the promotion, I still feel like I need to keep on the treadmill to prove my worth. It's still not enough. Or I still find myself hustling for people's approval and to be liked, even with people that I'm not actually bothered about being liked by, but I still find myself falling into that pattern. And just for some, I'm wondering if there's like this light bulb that's going off about, oh, I never even thought about that being safety related, about feeling safe in my body.
There's also this kind of losing of self and this feeling of directionless. Like, I've been on this path. I need to go through this path, and there's just there's nothing else I can do, perhaps, or there's no other option for me. I need to keep going because this is what feels safe. This is what will give me the things I believe that I will get. And it's interesting because I recorded a case study with a client recently, and she was also same a big high achiever. When she wanted to make something happen, she made it happen. Similar to me, and I'm sure you, Nikki. And then when she came to me, she said, like, I don't know what it is that I'm needing right now, but I know that I need to figure it out, and I know that there's something that doesn't feel right. She has a great career. She's making great money. She's able to, go on holiday and spend lots of money on holiday and give herself all these things. But there's something that didn't feel right. And so what we ended up through unpacking and through working with the nervous system, with her trauma, is we unpacked that she basically was living her life, her relationships, her work from a place of, I need to feel love. I need to feel approval. I need to feel worthy. And so from then disconnected her from what her true calling and her true purpose. And her relationship with money came up as well, where she was saying to me, I take calculated risks, right? I spend money on the things that, like, I've invested in you, and, it's not a small amount, my one-to-one coaching, and I go on holiday when I want, but I take calculated risks, and there's always a, how do you say, it's like, there's always a limit to what the downside could be, let's just say. And there was a lot of worry around, I don't know, being homeless or not being able to pay her mortgage. And then through working through a lot of this work, we've released her need for control. We've she's leaned into that deep sense of self-trust. And she said to me, and this is over the course of, and it's only, we've been working together for about 6 months now. And she said to me, I know exactly what I need to be doing now. This is the business I need to work to create. And I know exactly how I'm going to be doing this. And I asked her, how certain are you that you're going to make this happen? And she said to me, 120%. I have this knowing within me. And that knowing is that trust. And that happens when we've healed, because trauma is that disconnection of self, that disconnection from really trusting ourselves. And healing is that reconnection to self, and that reconnection with that sense of self-trust. So it was just so beautiful to witness that. And so now she's on her way to creating and really creating that purposeful life, and making money as well with it.
I think that's an important distinction, isn't it? Because there might be somebody listening going, oh, but if you're taking away, if my lack of safety is driving me and wanting me to achieve, if I feel safe in my body, do I just stop achieving and just kind of sit on a mountain? But what I'm hearing is, well, no, actually it's about achieving all those things, but with a regulated nervous system where you get the joy and the connection and the alignment with it.
And also coming back to what you said, if I stop striving for success or striving to achieve, our bodies, the wisdom of our body, I was talking about this before, is so much stronger than our mind. And your body is going to speak louder. And I see this a lot with a lot of high achieving women, is that they keep going and going, and they're doing very well. I mean, I want to say that in quotes, doing very well, their perception of success and what it's giving them internally. And then it's just not sustainable. And then there's burnout. And then and this is where usually there's a re-questioning of themselves, of who they actually are, because we lose who we actually are. In that process of trying to feel worthy. So sustainability is a really big one, and ease, right? Like, it doesn't have to feel so hard. It doesn't have to feel so exhausting. You weren't put on this earth for it to be so hard and to feel unworthy. And reconnecting with that innate sense of self-worth, that is just everything. And that will provide you with even more success than you could have ever imagined, but success that's aligned and that actually feels good and that is sustainable. So
yeah, I love that. And you talked about living on this planet, and I often say that we talk about living sustainably on the planet, but unless we learn to live sustainably in our bodies first, we're never going to live sustainably on the planet, because we've got no sense of what that is. So I love that. And you talk a lot in your work about living an embodied life, and you've talked a lot about the body and being in connection with that. Can you share what that means to you?
That simply means what I was saying before about that reconnection, and, it doesn't mean we completely ignore our brain. Like, I have a very, I have a very intellectual brain. I have a very analytical brain, but it's bringing those two, is bringing that finally with the wisdom of my body that I finally reconnected to, and the same for my clients. And that is what creates the magic. So living from an embodied place is living connected in feeling, and no longer numb, no longer in pursuit of these things to feel worthy. It's being connected to our innate sense of self-worth. You are worthy simply because you exist. And for many people, that concept can be a little bit difficult to wrap our head around, especially when we've been in that conditioning for so long.
Tell me what that might mean on a daily basis. So if you've got somebody that is disconnected from their body, what does that mean when they're kind of going, oh, I'm in touch with my body and I'm listening to it? And how might that inform what you do on a daily basis, for example? Can you give an example of what that's lived experience is?
So if you're not embodied, right, if you're moving from that disconnected place, it looks like, and I see this a lot with my community around me and with my friends, they keep moving and keep going and pushing and pushing. And, it's like you're moving from force, you're moving from struggle. And then, you go on that holiday and you spend the whole holiday trying to recover, your body's recovering. And then once you're finally recovered, you're like, I need this other holiday. A bunch of these things. Also, chronic pain is a big one. Chronic pain, people experience neck pain, back pain. All of these are symptoms of trauma. They're symptoms of trauma and a dysregulated breath, which comes with trauma. What else? So moving from an embodied place is moving with ease and moving with flow and trusting where you're heading, what the moves you're taking, and trusting that's of the path where you're going, and you're not exhausting yourself. You feel more energized. You rest when you need to rest. There's no story around if I rest, it means I'm not worthy. You rest when you need to rest. You're productive. Procrastination. I didn't mention procrastination when we talked about the signs earlier, but that's a big one. Procrastinate. People think that, okay, this is how we beat procrastination. You need to do a to-do list, and then you need to set this amount of time. Again, we're just managing the symptoms here, and it's not effective. And a lot of people, and it keeps a lot of people very frustrated in that cycle. Procrastination is another sign of the freeze state response. We talked about the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. It's the freeze state response. There's something that feels unsafe about this task that you need to be doing, or this thing that quote unquote you should be doing. Again, moving from these places of I should be. That's also a place that's not embodied. It's like you should be doing all these things. Why should you be doing all these things? Like, understanding and unpacking what's going on with these shoulds. What do you think that is going on? Why do you feel like you should be doing all of these things? So yeah, I wanted to mention procrastination is a huge one.
That's really important. Yeah.
Talking about, people talk about peak productivity, and this is how these tools are. It's just stepping out of that free state response. And I no longer procrastinate. I do not procrastinate. I rest when I need to, and I'm highly productive in those moments where I'm like, it's time to go. I want to do this. It's moving from more ease and from more flow, and being able to lead your life in the direction that feels right to you, without second guessing, without overthinking anything. I don't overthink anything now, because when you're connected from that place, and the more scientific term is interoception. It's like your body will tell you, right? Will tell you what you want to eat if you're hungry, and what what it needs to nourish your body, what it wants for the pleasure of having a pleasurable relationship with food. It will tell you what it wants in terms of moving your business. This feels right. Okay, we're going to move in this direction. This doesn't feel right. We're going to move in this direction. There's just ease. And I think that, ease is a huge word for me in my life and in my work. And it brings in ease. It brings in ease.
Love that. So earlier you talked about, people might think of breathing or yoga, and those can help, but they're treating the symptom rather than the cause. So can you just explain at like a high level what might be the way in which you work with your clients, and what would you be doing with them then?
Yeah. So I use breathwork, and I use trauma-informed yoga, because I'm a trauma-informed yoga therapist as well, and breathwork teacher. But in isolation, these things are not effective. In isolation, people do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and again, managing the symptoms. The way in which I work with people, and the way in which I've kind of fleshed out and pieced together my framework as it looks like now, is we integrate all of those pieces. We use the breath not just for the sake of doing some breath work and calming yourself down. The purpose is to start feeling in your body. When we've been stuck in that freeze state response, we've again disconnected. We're numb really to feeling. A lot of people who come to me, if I'm on a first call with them, and I'll ask them, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? Or what are you feeling? Or what are you feeling in your body? And they'll be like, oh, I think this, or, there's this connection, because we have been, disconnected from feeling for a very long time. So we use these practices, and we use, because they're very, very powerful, but it's what's powerful is integrating these practices to start to step out of the free state response, to start to resolve the trauma. And how we resolve the trauma, what happened is that your body was stuck in a stress cycle. So it didn't get the chance to fully experience the stress cycle, right? It wasn't given the chance to complete the stress response. I'm going to give an example. If you're being chased by a dog, for example, or a tiger is usually the example people give. You'll go in that fight or flight response. All the resources from your gut, your elimination system, from all your organs are going to be mobilized to get you to move you away from that danger. And then once that tiger isn't there anymore, what is a complete stress response is that you will return to baseline. You will be back into that rest and restore response of the parasympathetic nervous system, and your nervous system is back to is neutralized, right? But what happens with trauma is that we don't get the chance to complete that stress response. We don't get the chance to fully experience the full spectrum of emotions that come with that experience, and then return back to baseline. So we're stuck in that stress response. We're stuck in that place where there's still that threat. There's still that tiger running after us. So the key to doing that is to connect and unlock in our cell tissue all of those emotions that were locked up, that didn't get the chance to be fully experienced, and all the stories and the beliefs that were associated with that, and that were in our subconscious programming. So I get people to, through inner child work, but again, integrating that on a whole bodily basis, not just talking through stuff.
Somebody's not come across inner child work. Can you explain what that means or what that might sound or look like?
Yes. So the way I address it is through trigger work. You're being triggered in some way, right? There's something that you feel overwhelmed about, let's say, or you're experiencing, I felt like, I felt like I needed this post to be perfect before I post it, or if you're in employment, this presentation had to be super perfect. I needed to check it like thousands of times before I sent it off to my boss. These things that you're being triggered in those moments. So it's really about unpacking them. First of all, what are you experiencing in your body in those moments when you're outside of that intense reactivity? Because sometimes when we're in that panic, we're overwhelmed, we can't unpack. So it's really taking, once we're out of that intense reactivity, we begin to unpack it, understanding not understanding, but feeling into what's going on in the body, and bringing awareness to your body. Again, that's bringing awareness and that creating that connection consistently. And then from there, we can unpack, what is the story that I'm telling myself here? And through me coaching, because through coaching, as you're able to see those, to help your clients see those blind spots and they're not able to see. So, and when I notice them staying and trying to find it in their heads, that's where I get them to drop into their body. And that's where that magic comes. You access that deeper level of awareness. What is the story that I'm telling myself here? And then it's from that place, again, dropping into your body, that we can then go back into, where do you see a parallel with a childhood experience? Where do you see a parallel? But it can't just be at that level of, I was afraid of that presentation, or I was afraid of posting that, and so it needed to be perfect, or I was afraid of it being not good enough. We need to go deeper into, what are we feeling? What is the story that we're telling ourselves? And through those deeper layers, then you can find that connection with that inner child. And then I help them drop into their bodies, and really connect to, and really visualize that child and some of those emotions that not that child felt, because we're not going back in the past, but what you feel now when you think back to that child. And that's where the gold is where you're in the present moment, what you're feeling now, because we're releasing that emotional backlog that's happening right now. We're not concerned with what that she felt back then, although you will feel what she felt, or he felt, or they felt back then. It's about connecting now and starting to unlock these emotions, and allowing yourself to feel that anger, feel that sadness, and feel all these things, and to be able to be held in that space, to be able to do that. It releases everything. And then from that place, once we've released some of these emotions, then we can begin to rewire our programming. It has to be, we can't just, I see a lot of people out there, we're doing mindset work, and they say, find the thought and let's try and rewire it. Let's just change that belief. You simply can't do that. What we're doing is we're ignoring the body, we're ignoring the nervous system. So then we begin to rewire that programming. What are you saying to yourself here? What is that belief? And then what is your true, what is true for you in your current reality? What is actually true, not in your past reality, because that is very, we need to validate that, but that happened, and we need to acknowledge how valid it was that you started believing those things after what you experienced, or not experienced. And then we can turn on the rational brain, and the rational brain gets shut down with trauma. So it's about turning on the rational brain, and what is your current reality? My current reality is I'm safe here, or I'm not going to get specific into some examples, but that's when we can start to rewire our programming. And that's when we when we actually believe we are enough, and then we connect to that inner that sense of worthiness. So hopefully, I know that was a lot of information for you guys, but yeah, that's a little.
Thank you for taking us on that journey. So, what would your advice be for somebody that's listening to this conversation that says, "Oh, actually, I can identify some of the symptoms of an unregulated nervous system"? Where might they be able to start on this process of becoming regulated and feeling safe in their body?
What I would say, if there was one thing I would say, is exactly what we spoke about before, the trigger work. Now, noticing it happening, that's the first step. And it's a very, very, very first step. And then taking a step back, and this is where we reconnect. What am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? You can close your eyes, take a couple breaths just to help connect to your body. Just feel into the sensations in your body. And what I like to do, I like to converse with my body, and I invite my clients to converse. What am I feeling right now, body? And you'll start to feel some sensations, maybe around your chest, maybe around your face. They might be more prominent ones. They might be more subtle ones. What are you feeling in your body? You can even write that down afterwards. And then, what is a story that I'm telling myself here? What am I worried is going to happen here? Or what am I afraid, or what am I, is going to happen, is going to happen here? And that's a really great start. And and if you can start to do that regularly, you'll begin to uncover some things. And of course, if you want to be held, and you want to really do this work, so that you don't take, so that you don't take years and years like I did to figure this all out, and to not just figure this all out, but to actually embody it and actually heal, truly heal, so you can your career can be a success. Then of course reach out, and I'll be happy to help. I have loads of free resources as well. But I would start with that. What are you feeling in that moment? What is the story that you're telling yourself? What is the story I'm telling myself here? That can be derived from, what am I afraid is going to happen here? What am I worried is going to happen here? What feels unsafe here? And I think that's a great start.
Brilliant. I love that, kind of dropping into your body and really becoming, it's almost like that radical awareness. Yeah. And you mentioned that you've got lots of free resources, because I'm imagining people are listening to this and going, actually, I want to learn more about it. So where would you point people towards?
Well, actually, I don't know when this is going to go live, but I'm leading a free masterclass in a couple of weeks on the Tuesday, 19th of March. It's called the Nervous System Reboot. And I'm bringing it back. I did it last year. I led it last year, but this one's going to be even better. There's going to be some live coaching. And this is going to really walk you through the steps that you need to take to truly, create long-lasting and accelerated changes in your mindset, in your trauma healing, in your subconscious programming. And we'll go through all of that. And I'm not just teaching you here, because that's not what I'm about. There'll be some teaching, but you're going to be integrating this work. I'll be guiding you through a powerful process. There'll be some live coaching. So you're actually going to experience this work. So
where would you point people towards to find out details?
Yeah. So you can go to so you can either DM me on Instagram, Nicole Rose Coaching, with free masterclass, or the link is the nervoussystemreboot.com. Okay. So the nervoussystemreboot.com. And if you're an entrepreneur, I also have a free community that I've launched recently, and that has loads of free resources. There's loads of incredible challenges in there, and online events and workshops that I run in there. Again, it's completely free. So yeah, just reach out to me.
On your Facebook page, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on it's a Facebook group, exactly. Where it's not just there's so much value in there. There's loads of free resources. I run loads of events for free on there. So
I'll put all the links in the show notes. But what's your Facebook group called?
So I think it's best maybe if you just send me a message. I think, because it will. I don't know how it works with Facebook, but sometimes things will be difficult.
Where would you suggest people send you a message? Is that on your Instagram, DM you?
Yeah, you can just DM me on Instagram, Nicole Rose Coaching. You can message me on Facebook. My business page is Nicole Rose Coaching, or I'm Nicole Roehab Gomez. That will be a little bit. Maybe you can include that in the little spiel. But yeah, just reach out to me any way that you. Yeah, I have a website as well, NicoleRoseWellnessCoach.com. So many ways to reach out, and then I'll send you in the right direction.
Brilliant. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Well, thank you for joining me for this conversation, Nicole. It's such a fascinating topic, and I really appreciate you sharing kind of your story as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Well, again, thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff, and I could talk about it for another few hours. So thank you for having me on.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too, so if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.